event will be, is your VPN protecting your network or exposing it? And we're really going to be talking about hybrid working and how that's changed everything, where users are now everywhere, applications are in the cloud, and threats are even more advanced than ever. And our speakers, both Ollie Venn and Pete Quad, will take you into covering those topics in more detail. And yes, we'll also run a poll to midway through the session, just to get the pulse and see how things are, how you're finding things from a VPN perspective in your businesses. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Ollie Venn of WatchGuard and to Pete Cord of NetThreat. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'll start up and I'll introduce myself. So hey everyone, thank you for joining today. I am Ollie Venn, the Sales Engineering Manager for WatchGuard Technologies, covering the Northern Europe region. I've been with WatchGuard now just over 8 years in the sales engineering department. Was promoted to manager a couple of years ago. Prior to that, though, I was actually the infrastructure and security lead for the UK's largest privately owned car dealership group. And I discovered WatchGuard probably about 15 years ago now, where I modernized the infrastructure there and lived and breathed it and loved it so much that I came to work for WatchGuard 8 years ago. So that's a little bit about my story. I'm going to hand over to Pete just to introduce himself.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name's Pete Cord. I've been with NetThreat since 2017, so a little over 9 years now. Mostly spend my days speaking with the resellers, end users alike, helping businesses improve their security posture, protect their networks, basically talk about firewalls all day long, and all the other services in the wider portfolio as well. Really excited to be here today.
Great. So we're going to start off the slides today. As Lisa said, we're talking about hybrid working and how that's changed everything. Users are everywhere. Our apps are now in the cloud, and just our infrastructure is just significantly more complicated than it's ever been. So before we get started into the slides, I think we have a poll question, which we just want to ask you all. One, to make sure you're attentive and you're awake, but also just to see your thoughts of the world today. So hopefully, Lisa, you're able to launch that poll.
Yep, it's just coming now.
There we go. So does your team currently use a VPN for remote access? Yes, partially, and no. And I can see 44% so far said yes. 22% is partially, and 33% is no. Seems to be stabilizing at that with 9 responses. Perfect. So it seems like the majority of you are still using VPN for remote access. Some of you partially. So it'd be interesting. Feel free to sort of put into, I don't know if you have access to the chat or the Q&A about how you're using those scenarios today. And we'll have another follow-up poll question shortly. It does remind me, we do have time for Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions as we're going through, we'll address them at the end. So feel free to put them in, but always put a little bit of context around them, because often if you ask a question on a specific moment, by the time we get to the end, it doesn't always make sense. So just put some context around it, and we'll jump to those at the end. Right, so let me get started. And okay, so here's the journey we're going to go through together. We'll start with a quick trip back to see why VPNs were invented in the first place. Then we're going to have a look at the VPN trap that sort of sprung wide open, and show exactly how sort of attackers are exploiting the various traps in there. Then we're going to pivot to the good stuff, obviously, and zero trust, what that means, and how the process works step by step, and critically, sort of how that matters for you with your remote and hybrid workers and sort of achieving compliancy. And then we're going to bring that all together with the full shift to zero trust. So it's feeling achievable and not overwhelming, which is often it can do with sort of these new terminologies. So let's dive in and take a look. To understand the trap, we have to first understand the origin story. But back in 1996, Microsoft engineers actually created the peer-to-peer tunneling protocol, and this was the VPN. It was born in '96. The idea was beautiful. It was simple. It let a handful of employees tunnel into a corporate network as if they were there inside the building. And once they were inside, they were trusted completely. They had full access as if they were sat at a desk in the office. Once you're inside, you do often have the keys. You've got access to everything: file shares, databases, internal apps, all of it. And for small office-bound workforce, that logically actually worked. But fast forward to today's world, and with hundreds of remote workers, SaaS applications, cloud workloads, and people moving fluidly between them all, that cozy, trusted connection has quietly become a single point of failure. The very thing that was built to protect us is now the front door attackers are actually using to knock on, and that's where the trap really begins. I forgot I've got animation in these slides. Must remember that. So let me just skip forward. There we go. Okay. I think it's that one. There we go. Okay. So, sorry, let me build this slide up. Always forget, marketing put lots of animations in my slides. The failure number one is overprivileged. Here's the problems that with the old get inside in your trusted model. Once a VPN drops a user into the network, they're on a flat, wide open plane. So you've then got ERP systems, finance, data stores. It could be healthcare records. It could be PCI information. It could be access to your data centers. They're all now reachable. And now think about what that means when not if an account gets compromised. The attacker doesn't land in one small room. They land in the whole building with a master key and access to absolutely everything in your environment. This is exactly how ransomware spreads laterally and how data gets stolen at scale. One foothold becomes total access, and VPNs were never designed to say you can reach this app and nothing else. They were built to connect you to everything. As we discussed with the very first protocol, it was designed to get you inside the network as if you were sat at a desk inside that environment. And obviously, in today's environment, that is just far too much with all the compliancy requirements that we have around there. The next trap is the identity breakdown. When your security boils down to a password plus a VPN login, you basically handed attackers a roadmap. Watch the chain of events: a phishing email, a credential stuffing attack, harvest a password. AI-powered brute force type tools will crack the weak passwords in seconds. It's not a question of like, are our users using long, secure passwords? With vulnerabilities as well and easier attack metrics, these sessions are just relying on a when, not an if. Credential compromise, sort of VPN logins and remote access ransomware detonation. It's a clean, repeatable attack path, and it plays out in organizations every single day. The painful irony that the VPN did its job perfectly. It let the right credentials in. The problem is it has no way of knowing the person holding them isn't who they claim to be. And that's our worry in today's world. On the dark web, it's easy to buy a credential for dollars. And using those credentials users are often using those credentials over and over again. And as soon as you realize that credential belongs to an organization and they've got a VPN exposed, it's quite easy to then try using that credential to get into our environments. Failure number three comes behind the fact you're driving blind. When a remote user connects to a VPN, do you actually know anything about the device they're using it? Is it patched? Is it running endpoint protection? Is it a personal laptop riddled with malware that's used for gaming or gambling and file sharing, peer-to-peer file sharing apps? The kicker is with the VPN tunnel is it's often all encrypted, which sounds great, but it also means that risky traffic is often hidden from you. Unless you're doing full deep packet inspection and understanding what that traffic is, you often don't understand. It's just there hidden away from your standard security protocols. The encryption meant to protect you is actually now really hiding what's going on in your environment. You're trusting a device you can't see, you can't inspect it, and you can't verify it. It's like letting somebody into your building without checking what they're carrying, simply because they're wearing the right badge. In security, what you can't see absolutely can and does often hurt you. And then we come over to the final failure point, number 4, and that's the performance, the user experience killer. Every VPN forces remote traffic to backhaul all the way to a central gateway before it goes anywhere. That means latency, overloaded concentrators, dropped connections, and frustrated users who just want to get on with their work. So what do teams do? They start carving out exceptions. You make it easier for the user. So split tunneling, bypasses, shortcuts, anything to make it faster and seamless for the user. The trap is that within the trap, the more you fix the user experience, the more risk you introduce. Tighter security and performance tanks loosen it for speed, and you blow holes in your defenses. You're stuck choosing between happy users and a secure network, and that's a losing trade-off. And it's one VPNs force you to make every single day. And we see this with our users. Home connections are getting faster and faster. Users expect to have, when they're sort of working in their home, for example, the same sort of speed when they're connected to the VPN as when they're not connected to the VPN. And this really creates this battle between performance and user friction. I forgot about the animations again. And it isn't all just theoretical as well. The trap is being exploited right now. So this timeline, which I haven't actually updated with some recent exploits as well, but this timeline shows that things like in January, Ivanti Connect Secure had 2 flaws. One, a 0-day under an active attack since mid-December. April brought a critical buffer overflow in Ivanti gateways and active, and also the active abuse of Fortinet SSL VPN. In July, Sonic Wall's end-of-life appliances were hit with the overstep backdoor for credential theft and extortion. September delivered 2 actively exploited Cisco ASA 0-day, which enabled remote code execution. And October piled on over 100 Sonic Wall accounts compromised from a single IP, plus a nation-state breach of F5 that stole big IP source code. The headline stat, Threat Labs found 56% of organizations reported a VPN exploit breach in 2024, more than half, which is crazy. VPN gateways have become the attacker's favorite front door now. And this is why VPNs or legacy traditional VPNs are just no longer safe and can no longer be trusted. So now we are going to fire our next poll up. And here we go. So would you still be comfortable relying on a VPN based on what you've just heard for remote access? Good to see an overwhelming proportion say no. It's quite interesting, isn't it, Pete? We saw at the beginning, like a lot of people are still using VPN.
Yes.
And now, obviously, the response, I think the 1% or the 17% rather was actually probably me clicking yes, just to throw a curveball in there. I wouldn't, by the way, I would not use traditional based VPNs. And interestingly, only 6 people now responded as well. Well, we had 9 the first time, so people are like, maybe I don't want to admit to being comfortable to rely on a VPN. So I'm going to take your answer, those that didn't answer, as no. And also, it might be worth a conversation. It is true. I think it's certainly an eye-opener, some of these stats, but it's one of those things that we've just not really realized was actually happening.
Ollie, would you say that would adding multi-factor authentication to VPNs, would that not fix these problems then? Adding that extra layer of security?
Unfortunately not. It's better than nothing. If you're just relying on a username and password, then absolutely adding MFA is going to be better. The problem with with traditional VPNs, even adding on MFA may not fix the problem. We saw in this slide that's still on the screen that there's been a lot of sort of zero-day exploits and sort of breaches or hacks to get into VPNs. And the reason for that is because, like I showed in my earlier slides, once you've got into a network, you've then often got keys to the kingdom, and you've got certainly a lot more access. So it's more advantageous for the hackers to go after sort of the vendor type exploit and push that way. The other trouble with MFA, and we saw this with like the likes of Uber breach, is that users can be still susceptible to MFA type attacks. So what I mean by this is, which happened with Uber, is somebody finished work for the day, they went home, and they were getting MFA push requests, and they were doing the right thing. They were saying, nope, that's not me trying to connect, deny, deny, deny. But after so many, they'd kind of got fed up and thought, okay, this just must be a glitch in the system. I wonder what happens if I hit approve. They hit approve, the hacker then got into their account and got access to the resources that they needed to. So it's a thing called push fatigue. Now, obviously, there are steps in place to prevent that for a lot of vendors, but it's still reliant on that human being. So adding MFA is definitely a good step in the right direction, but it's not this is going to fix everything.
Okay, thanks, Ollie. The other question I'd ask is the that figure you mentioned earlier from your previous slide, the 56% figure from was it Threat Labs? That's quite a striking figure. I mean, how should we be reading that, and how should our customers be reading that sort of statistic?
Yeah, it's again going back to, I think, hackers are using VPNs, traditional VPNs, as a way into organizations now, and that alone, over 50% of organizations has sort of reported some kind of VPN exploit or breach. It means that it's not a case of if, but when your VPN is going to be exploited, and I think that we should be reading this into, we need to take a shift in thoughts when it comes to VPN.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Cool. Right. I am now going to tell you how to fix this stuff. So we've heard about the scary things, right? And now I just want to sort of go into, like, there are answers out there. So if the VPN model is broken, what replaces it? And zero trust. The philosophy is right there in the name. Never trust, always verify. Zero trust basically assumes that no user and no device and no application should be trusted by default, not even when inside your network. Instead of trusting once at the door, it rests rather on 4 core principles. Verify explicitly, authenticate and authorize every single connection. Use the least privileged access, so you're limiting what users and apps can ever reach. Assume breach. Design as if attackers are already inside, and monitor continuously. Inspect the traffic and behavior and posture in real time. Access is granted per session and constantly reevaluated based on identity, device health, and also context. Put simply, zero trust equals identity plus device plus context plus continuous control, protecting every connection from anywhere on any device. And whenever I've explained that to people, they've kind of just gone to me, that sounds really complicated and not something I would ever achieve. But actually, it is a lot easier to achieve in the real world. So it's not a single product that you can buy. So if anybody ever says to you, hey, buy this, it's zero trust, it's not. It's a framework. You assemble it. And what we're going to do is I'm going to speak about the pillar that actually can help replace VPN. So remote user network security powered by zero trust network access, or you may hear it referred to as ZTNA, or if it's an American presentation, it would be ZTNA. It's the real VPN killer, where a VPN dumps a user onto the entire, so a VPN goes from sort of dumping a user onto the entire network. ZTNA flips that model completely. It delivers full visibility and enforces session-based controls. So people connect only to the specific sanctioned apps that they were authorized for, with data governance baked in as well. You no longer have these wide open tunnels that allow lateral movement. It's all locked down. The other pillars that make it stronger, so you've got identity management, brings in centralized authentication. So we're using MFA, even single sign-on. We can add in things like conditional access, endpoint security, so continuously validating the device health. With controls like firewall as a service, this means that we can inspect fully the traffic that's going over that as well. So we know fully what's going on. And this means that ZTNA is what's going to retire VPN, swapping network level trust for continuous least privileged app level access. And this is where it all comes together with FireCloud Total Access. It's designed exactly for this new reality. It's a cloud delivered service that extends the trust protection of your firewall. If you've got a WatchGuard firewall, great. If not, it works with any other vendor as well. And it puts that protection into every corner of your business, whether your people are in the office, working from home, traveling halfway around the world. FireCloud is going to give them secure, zero trust, always on access to the internet, but also their SaaS applications, private cloud workloads, and on-prem resources, all without the risks and the bottlenecks associated with traditional VPNs. The key shift is from network level access to application level access. Users only connect to the app that they're authorized for and nothing more. So if an account is compromised, the attacker gets blocked at the door instead of handed a wide open tunnel. This isn't just a VPN replacement, it's a complete modernization of the remote access too. So if we have a look under the hood at the three components that make FireCloud work, we have the connection manager, which is basically a lightweight agent on the user's device that handles authentication, always on, routing traffic to the nearest point of presence, and enforces your policies. It works at line speed, so if the user's got a 2 gig connection at home, it's going to be a 2 gig connection that they're getting out to the cloud as well. It's remotely deployed. So IT never has to touch the endpoint. If you've already got our endpoint security on there, it's super easy. It's a tick box to turn it on. The global points of presence, an expanding network of cloud enforcement points that encrypt, optimize, route and terminate the traffic while acting as zero trust checkpoints, are close to every user as well, regardless of where they are in the world. We have gateways which connect to your on-prem infrastructure. So if you do have on-prem infrastructure that your users are currently using VPN to connect to, then our gateways can handle that as well. They create secure connections between your on-prem app and resources to our secure point of presence. They enforce identity-based access and support things like fireboxes, obviously if you've got a WatchGuard firebox, but if not, we have virtual appliances available, so which run on VMware and Hyper-V. 3 pieces working as one, delivering seamless application level security for your remote users. I mentioned performance already, so I won't spend too much time on this slide, but basically we have points of presence across the world. It's all delivered on a highly available AWS infrastructure, which means it's quick, but also super reliable for your users. And no matter where they're connecting to the internet, it often has good connectivity into AWS. It's purpose-built for remote access and designed to replace VPNs entirely. So this is firewall-grade protection, regardless of where the user are. So if you imagine they're just traveling with a WatchGuard firewall with them 24/7, whether they're connecting in a coffee shop, whether they're connecting at home, whether they're connecting to some dodgy Wi-Fi service, because it's the only way that they can get connected, they will have full encrypted traffic up to a point of presence, which our firewalls then will decrypt that traffic and fully inspect it, making sure that there is nothing going on that they shouldn't be doing through that network. I'm going to visualize this now for you to to give you a better idea of what this looks like. So the user is going to authenticate to the service. So we're going to try basically and connect to the internet. We will then validate to make sure that their device health and posture is good, and that their credential is still valid. The user opens up, for example, BBC. It's just going to stay going through the internet gateway. But now say the user wants to access an on-prem resource. It may be something like SAP, HR application, whatever it is. What the Zero Trust Network actually does is then communicate with the central cloud to retrieve the user's role and policy information, make sure that they can actually get access to that resource that they're trying to access. If they are, the ZTNA validates them, make sure that they are who that they say they are, and this is moment in time. So if you've just fired somebody or disabled their account for whatever reason, they then won't be able to access those resources as soon as you do it. And it's also continuously monitoring. So if you disable account, it will prevent or revoke their access immediately. The POP then enforces all the other security policies that you might have. So even if the user's working remotely, you may still say, actually, I only want them to access the HR app when they're in the UK, for example. It may be that you have a certain compliance requirement. You can then control that and say, actually, you're only allowed access to the HR in these geographical locations, even time-based. What it will also do is, whilst the app is open, is you can set it to disable access to the internet. So this then stops applications or other services on the internet then trying to access that app. Obviously, it can happen momentarily whilst the data is sending, but this just gives you an extra layer of protection, prevents those sort of command and control type based attacks. Once the gateway is validated, all of those checks are okay, it then grants the user access. And the user now has access to the app. This sounds like it may take a while, but this actually happens in milliseconds. It all happens seamlessly in the background. So giving the user access to those resources that they need, whilst seamlessly still working, and not even realizing all of this is actually taking place in the background, offering you great security, but also a really seamless experience for the user who wouldn't have to fire up a VPN manually. They've not had to wait for a process check. They've not had to accept another MFA push or anything like that. It's all just happened seamlessly. So this is where we've finally got that balance or the right level of security, but also user experience as well. Because we all work in IT, we know that if users don't adopt things, or if we make users' lives hard, they're going to try and find workarounds. Now, thankfully, we don't have to rely on the users trying to find a workaround. That brings me nicely to any questions and comments. Pete, am I handing back to you to ask any questions that might have come in?
Yes, you can do. We've got a question already here. Quite a good practical from a practical perspective, really, Ollie. Sort of links in quite nicely with what you were just saying. If somebody's just asked, we're not starting from scratch. How disruptive is moving away from VPN in practice? So in reality, how disruptive is moving away from VPN?
Yeah, so a lot of people still have VPNs set up. We saw it in the first poll question, and this is something that you can set up really easily. It's not a case that you have to just rip and replace day one. You can progressively move users over to it. So it's the great thing of it. It's not a service that's already running on the firewall, and it's a completely different solution. So you can even set up a trial for this today. I think it's up for 250 users. This then gives you the ability to start rolling this out to your users, get them set up. And honestly, once it's set up, you can integrate it with like Active Directory groups, central groups, etc. And you just get people sort of rolling out to them. So it's not just oh no, I need to turn off VPN and go to a SASE type solution. It can be a phased migration, so it does make it available for everyone.
Okay, I've got a couple of other questions. If we've got time, I know it's been a bit of a tight session, getting everything in. Another question here is one of our customers has AuthPoint, MFA, securing VPN. How does that integrate with the WatchGuard firewall and their on-prem network. Can you go into some detail on that, Ollie?
Yeah, so AuthPoint MFA is a great MFA solution. I'm going to say that, but it really is. The way that we use sort of the device DNA to add in an extra layer into mobile, into the authentication mix is quite clever. But it obviously, like I mentioned earlier, for traditional VPNs does add MFA to it, but it still doesn't fix all of the other problems. Like if a user accepted a push and they've then somebody's got into your network. It does tie in beautifully with FireCloud as well, so native support with there. So if you are using, if you wanted to use FireCloud, then AuthPoint is directly integrated to that. So you literally just say, hey, I want to use AuthPoint.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Ollie. The last question I've got here is of a PCI compliance nature. Somebody's asking, we're PCI compliant, but we're still using VPN for some of our team. Are we exposed anywhere?
So the answer is potentially. As we saw in my first slides, there's a lot of vulnerabilities, 0-day vulnerabilities out there. I think if PCI compliancy is definitely a concern for you, I don't think at the moment it's a requirement for PCI to be ZTNA. However, I would imagine it's coming very soon. We're starting to see it more in cyber insurance policies, which generally then means that other compliancy models will follow suit. And so PCI would probably definitely be one of those. And I think, in all honesty, knowing what you now know, if you have any kind of compliancy, whether that's PCI, whether it's NIST 2, whether it's Cyber Essentials Plus, I would definitely be looking at a SASE solution, which is what the FireCloud is. It's basically a SASE solution instead of traditional VPNs.
I have just spotted one more question, I think, in the chat here. I don't know if this has been covered already, Ollie, but what are your thoughts on certificate-based authentication on VPNs?
Yeah, so certificate-based is, again, it's kind of like an MFA. It should be more secure, but it doesn't protect you from any vulnerability. So if there was an exploit found in a vendor's VPN system, then you would still be exposed to that. Also, if a user were to export the certificates from a device and then put that on their own personal device, there's nothing stopping that from happening. So it's a better than just having a username and password, but still it's not a be all and end all fix to the problem.
Great.
That's great. Thank you. Sorry, that's great. Thank you so much for that. I'm conscious of time, chats.
Yes.
So want to start winding things down. We have one last question we'll squeeze in. It's from Derek. What are your thoughts on certificate-based authentication on VPNs?
Is that what we just covered off?
Did we just cover that? It's not a duplicate. Oh, sorry, apologies. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Good stuff. So I'd like to thank both Ollie and Pete for the session today. Really insightful. I hope everyone has something that they can take back to the business and start thinking about around VPN security and zero trust. Just a few takeaways. So we do have a resource kit. There will be a follow-up email. In the kit, we'll send you a zero trust checklist. There'll be an offer of a free trial where there's demos as well. And we're also offering a gap analysis tool. It's an online tool, be able to complete it in your own time. And that will then give you some insights, a report into areas where you might want to tightening things up. So we'll get that over in an email too. And that'll follow up later today. And yeah, it's been a great session. If anyone has any additional questions or thoughts after this, don't hesitate to drop us a line, myself, Pete, or even Ollie. We can get the questions to Ollie, and we will come back to you. But again, thank you so much for your time today, and let's continue the conversation. And thank you again to both Pete and Ollie. Thanks, chaps.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.